tax exempt bond proceeds to fund the acquisition and renovation of the 176 unit project-based Section 8 project in Torrington. And the third is to allow payoff of the 2 existing loans totaling in the aggregate 6.9 million from sale proceeds. The parent company of the borrower is Community Preservation Partners, or CPP East. They have LIHTC properties in 14 states. They focus on senior family and multifamily affordable housing, and they now have approximately 11,000 units. They are rapidly expanding in Connecticut and throughout New England. Right now, they're using third-party property managers until their footprint justifies creating their own management company. So they will be using MCR property managers, the existing managers, to manage this property. I've toured 2 of the MCR properties, and they appear to be very well managed. The management company is very visible and well known to the residents. I toured this property. I think it was the coldest day of the year. It was 7 below, I think, in January, up in Torrington. Yep. So I did a little bit of the tour from my car, and it's a very big project. I kept driving, a lot of buildings, appeared clean and well maintained. It is a little tired, though. It does need the renovations. While we were waiting, we waited in the management room, and then we moved over to the community center. An environmental company was going to join us on the tour. And while we were sitting in the community center, a group of special needs people walked through to the kitchen, and the manager explained that they hire special needs residents and train them and pay them to do odd jobs, which I thought was very cool, really spoke to the community involvement of the management company. So the GC and the architect have been vetted and approved by Chfa Tech Services. The LIHTC equity investor and the bridge loan are provided by PNC Bank. The total development costs work out to approximately $229,000 per unit. Construction's approximately $64,000 a unit. And again, the property is a little tired now, but it will be lovely after the renovations, and it will be well positioned to compete in the market. And that is confirmed by the appraisal and the market study. The metrics are good. We've got an 80% loan to value, and the debt coverage works out to be 1.13 times at initial stabilization, and it does improve each year with 49% cost ratio. I would say the biggest issue with this project is we have a very aggressive close date. The purchase and sale agreement expires next Friday, March 4th. So if we have approval, we are rushing to a close with PNC Bank as well. And Chfa's legal team has represented they are up to the challenge. Any questions?
So does Michael Belfonte still involved, or is he selling? Because I know Michael.
He is selling. We put in a little org chart to show he's kind of has a 10% interest, really a 1% interest. His management company is staying in the project. He is actually working with this group to sell another of his properties, one of his New Haven properties they've been looking at to buy as well.
Yeah, he's a good guy. We had good experience with him. Very interesting. It looks like a nice setting, you know, despite the economics of Torrington, and with the, you know, with the decrease in population, it does look like an attractive, at least from the pictures that I've seen.
It was very homey, safe feeling and comfortable, well located. They have a bus stop right on the property.
Could you please explain the challenge that you were just talking about to get it closed?
The purchase and sale agreement was originally scheduled for December 30th. They got one extension, and it matures next Friday, March 4th. The first extension did cost them $100,000. They're hoping to close March 4th. The borrower and seller have indicated they're open to another extension, but they want to hear that sooner than later. But we are still, the goal is still to close by March 4th.
Okay. What about occupancy? I assume that there's no problem with the units being rented constantly, or there's no vacancy, right?
There is a waiting list.
There is.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Just one more, Heidi. So when they do the work on these units, have they made provisions for the people, the tenants, the existing tenants, to be able to either stay in their units or have other units available? How will anybody be have to relocate during the renovation period?
They are planning on a renovation in place. They do not expect anyone will have to relocate. However, they do have over 200,000 budgeted for relocation expenses. They will help people pack. They will provide boxes. They have a moving company. If someone is uncomfortable or doesn't want to be in the unit when they're renovating, they will put them up in a hotel. They are currently negotiating with 2 different companies to manage the relocation, logistics of everything, but they've got it pretty well planned at this point, and they don't anticipate any permanent relocations.
Okay, well, this looks like it's right up our alley, this project, I would say. Anybody else? Any other comments, concerns, questions? No? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve as submitted.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Okay, Cindy, thank you. Shelley?
Wendy Butts,
Yes.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWingert,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
and Greg Ugalde.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Second up on our agenda is the transfer and modification of, and these were a mouthful, Sound Community Services, Reliance Health and Safe Futures in New London and Norwich. And Adam is presenting, I believe.
Yes. Hi, how are you all today?
Good.
So the proposal that we're going to discuss is the sale of the Corporation of Independent Living owned properties to Eastern Connecticut Housing Opportunities, and also to restructure existing debt into one mortgage and amortizing and non-amortizing loans. First, let me give you a little background of the Corporate of Independent Living, otherwise known as SIL, and how they got into this. They specialize in development and financing of group homes in Connecticut and Massachusetts. What they do is they provide 100% of the financing and development services to the agencies that run the group homes. SIL entered the Supportive Housing Pilots Initiative originally in 2007. They did it because they assumed supportive housing would be the same model as group homes. Unfortunately, they found out relatively quickly that it was not. So in 2015, they determined that supportive housing model was not viable for them. They didn't have the expertise to manage these type of developments, and that was really what they felt why they wanted to get out. So they contacted Chfa with an exit strategy, but it could not be, they couldn't figure it out at that time. So SIL notified Chfa in May 2020 that they wanted to sell the properties and divest all their interest in affordable and supportable housing because it's outside of the core mission. CHFA conducted its due diligence, and Eastern Connecticut Housing Opportunities, otherwise known as ECHO, was selected. SIL is sold and is in the process of selling its other affordable developments. If the ECHO deal is approved, they'll have divested all their interest in affordable and supportable housing. So the SIL properties consist of 3 developments, as we already said, which are a mouthful. There's a total of 21 units. 100% of the units are affordable at 50% of the area median income. The units also must be occupied by residents who meet the requirements of the Supportive Housing Pilots Initiative program. The individual developments, Sound Community Services, which is a 13-unit scattered site development located in Groton and New London, and it consists of studio and 1-bedroom units. The Reliance Health is a 4-unit development located in Norwich, consisting of 1-bedroom units. And Safe Futures, a 4-unit scattered site development located in New London and Norwich, and it consists of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The total outstanding debt for all the mortgages is about $4.2 million. The current loans mature in either the 4th quarter of 2037 or the 1st quarter of 2038. So what we're recommending is to restructure the existing mortgages into one mortgage with amortizing and non-amortizing loans. The purchase price will be $1 million. Chfa will retain the existing residual receipts. It's approximately $482,000 right now, $200,000 of which will be applied to the purchase price to reduce the loan amount to $800,000. DEMIS and DOH have already approved the use of the residual receipts to be applied to the purchase price. The reason for that is because part of the supportive housing initiative pilot, that's where the money originally came from. The amortizing loan will be in the amount of $800,000. The rate will be 1% for a term of 20 years, amortized over 30 years. The non-amortizing loan will be in the amount of approximately $3.2 million. The rate will be 0% for a term of 20 years. This loan will be reduced on an annual basis in the amount equal to 5% of the original principal amount, provided they are not in default with either loan. CHFA will retain the operating reserves, about $143,000, to be dispersed at the sole discretion of CHFA. ECHO must maintain the affordability, as I said, 100% of the units at 50% AMI for the term of the mortgage, and also the tenants must qualify under the parameters of the Supportive Housing Initiative Program. Supportive housing services will need to be provided throughout the term of the mortgage. DOH will provide $650,000 of funding for deferred maintenance and rehabilitation of the properties. This also has already been approved. DOH is committed to continue rental assistance program subsidies for an additional 15 years until 2036. A little history on ECHO. ECHO is a nonprofit corporation founded in 1989 with the purpose of providing affordable housing to families and individuals in Eastern Connecticut. They own and operate approximately 146 multifamily affordable units, and actually 3 of which Chfa has financed. ECHO has rehabilitated over 30 single and 2-family homes and 150 units of multifamily housing. And they do almost all the construction and most of the construction management in-house, and they do sub out some of the construction itself. The financial performance of the properties has been below average. Sound Communities has a vacancy rate of 23%. And the reason for that is in 2020, they had a fire at 140 Connecticut Ave, and they had an eviction at 10 Georgiana Street. There was 2 units involved in the fire, and those units have been renovated and they are in the process of being occupied. The other properties are 100% occupied. The unit at Georgiana Street is going to have to be part of the renovation that ECHO would have to do. Chfa we recommend that the board approve the sale of the SIL properties to ECHO and restructure the mortgages into one mortgage with amortizing and non-amortizing loans. The reason for that is currently SIL's loan is deferred and we're not collecting any principal or interest. If we restructure the loan, we will be able to collect principal and interest. Also, the sale and restructure will preserve 21 units of supportive housing in the eastern part of the state, and it will also improve the living conditions for a very, very vulnerable population. Thank you. And does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair, this is Lisa.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Just want to say this is a very creative project. I'm glad to see it move forward. These are real blue chip nonprofits that have stellar reputations and do really important work in the eastern part of the state. And I flag that specifically because the eastern half of the state is, largest geographically in terms of a region, the way we think of regions, but is also the least well sourced in terms of this type of organization, these types of services. So to see these really terrific nonprofits coming together to do this as a collective project and getting the support of CHFA, I just think is fantastic. Very strongly in favor.
Thank you. Quick question. You mentioned that we have 3 loans with ECHO right now. I'm assuming those are all being handled as agreed?
Yes, they are. Yes, they're all in compliance.
Okay.
And I've actually been out and visited at least 1, if not 2 of the properties, and they were satisfactory, if not highly doing great, really looking good.
What's the challenges that you see?
Adam, Adam, the vacancy rate you said is 23% now, but you also are looking forward and thinking that they're going to be able to really reduce that over time. What does that calendar look like if you had to estimate, like over the next year and then even a couple years?
Well, the 2 units that are ready to go. As soon as the deal is done, Echo will be right on that, and those should be able to be occupied. The one that needs renovation, it all depends on how Echo does the renovation. From what they determined is they were going to go project by project, building by building, because they don't want, if they don't have to rehouse people, that would be perfect. And if they do have to rehouse someone, they might have an empty unit in another property. That is built into the budget. So I can't give you on the second, that Georgiana Street, I can't give you a good timeline at this point.
How do we come up with a 1% interest rate?
We basically threw a lot of things at the wall, and it's really what the project can handle. When you take in all the expenses and you look at what the payments would be, that's the only way we could have positive cash flow through the term of the loan.
Okay. So it's basically, our goal is to have it break even, basically, with a little reserve.
That is correct. The goal is that, and to preserve these 21 units.
Mm-hmm. So what do you see as the biggest challenge?
I think renovation right now, with the way the market is, and just the cost of everything. I think that's going to really be it. And supportive services, it's a tough market, tough place to be. So I think that's going to be a little challenging. But I think Echo is up to it. They really are.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Concerns? Okay, we have a motion.
So moved.
Thanks, Lisa.
Second.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, Shelley.
Cindy Butts,
Yes.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugaldi,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the prepayment of the loan for Highwood Gardens, which is in Hamden. Every time I see a prepayment, I wonder why we talk about them, but I think it is good to revisit projects, but just curious. Anyway, Wendy, I think, is presenting.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, Wendy.
We do have delegated, well, Anthony has delegated authority to approve some prepayments, but when they fall a little bit outside of our policy, then we need to bring them to the committee. That's
Okay.
why. So.
Thank
So Highwood Gardens is a 16-unit Section 8 development that's located in Hamden. CHFA financed this property back in 1982 with a loan of $495,000 at a rate of 11.5%, and the mortgage maturity was 2012. John Capone, who owns and manages the property, refinanced with CHFA back in 2012. Proceeds of the loan at that time were used to pay off the first CHFA loan, fund $200,000 in capital needs, fund an accrued unpaid distribution, and an equity takeout of approximately $329,000. This owner has 3 other properties with CHFA in his portfolio, and they are all well maintained and in compliance. At this time, Mr. Capone is nearing retirement and wants to start to downsize his portfolio. And Wendell Matthew Harp, who is an owner who has experience with CHFA and HUD properties, owns a property nearby Highwood, and approached Mr. Capone about purchasing. Mr. Harp owns 5 project-based Section 8 properties in New Haven County. Mr. Capone met with HUD to talk about the possible assignment of the HAP contract to Mr. Harp, and HUD was, their reaction was positive. So Mr. Capone requested now to prepay the existing CHFA loan and to sell to Mr. Harp. The property is in good condition. The last REACT score was a 92. And the new owner also commissioned a CNA in October, and the critical and non-critical repairs identified in the report only equaled about $10,000. The existing Section 8 contract expires in 2032, but the new owner intends to keep the property affordable and intends to renew the HAP prior to that time under a markup to market contract. CHFA will place a restrictive covenant document on the property to ensure the units remain affordable for 15 years following the prepayment. In order to renew under option 1A, HUD does not permit a lower moderate income use restriction that can't be terminated unilaterally by the owner. So we've worked with the buyer and his attorney to draft a restrictive covenant document that will work for both CHFA and the proposed buyer, so that he can renew under option 1A. The current Section 8 contract is in option 4, which instead of marking rents up to market based on a rent comparability study, instead increases rents based on an annual adjustment factor, which often lags behind inflation and doesn't take into account any property improvements. By renewing under a markup to market contract, the new owner will be able to increase the revenues and improve the property, which will benefit the residents. By allowing this prepayment, CHFA will receive a payoff of the loan, approximately $721,000, a 1% fee of about $7,000, and the property that's in good condition will remain affordable for at least 15 more years. Are there any questions?
So are they getting financing from someone else? Or
Yeah.
there's no, yeah? Who? Do you know?
I don't know. We tried to work with him to
Mhm.
possibly come to CHFA,
Right.
but he wanted a shorter term than we could give him. So
A
that's why he went.
shorter?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else questions? Okay, we have a motion.
Motion to approve the prepayment.
Thank you, Greg. I'll second it. Shelley?
Cindy Butts,
Yes.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugaldi,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the modification memo for Science Park, the Science Park loan, which is the New Haven project, which is the continuing saga, I would say. Well written, thank you. And John is going to present it.
Good afternoon. So we're requesting a board approval for a loan modification of Science Park Development Corp., reducing the monthly principal payments from $11,775 to $4,114, commencing the earlier of April 1st or the completion of documentation. The current modification expires March 1st. The interest will continue to accrue at 5%. Cash flow after operating expenses plus a 10% set aside or cushion will be deposited into a general reserve to be held by CHFA, and the funds will be used or may be used for operating shortfalls and capital expenditures subject to the approval of the mortgagees. All principal and accrued interest will be due and a balloon payment to maturity, which is December 1st, 2028. And our recommendation is to have this modification in place until the maturity of the loans, which is 2028. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Science Park, what we refer to as Science Park is actually Building 5 within Science Park. Science Park is a redevelopment of the former Winchester Repeating Arms Factory complex, which is an 80-acre area in north central quadrant of New Haven. Science Park was launched in 1982 by a consortium with Yale, City of New Haven, State of Connecticut, and the Olin Corporation, with a vision of creating incubator space for technology-driven companies. Many of the buildings have been redeveloped into research technology space along with mixed-use development, including residential use. CHFA's building 5 was the loan on building 5 was originated in 1998. At the time, CHFA had significant housing investment and in single-family, multifamily mortgages surrounding the neighborhoods. And the investment was justified as a way of assisting in the revitalization of the area. The building itself is a 3-story, 106,000 square foot former mill building. It was built in 1909. It's currently fully occupied with tenants utilizing the building for office and laboratory space. The outstanding principal balance is approximately $9.7 million with approximately $5 million accrued interest. The building was most recently appraised in September of 2020 with a concluding value of $9.5 million. The borrower is Science Park Development Corporation, which is incorporated as a not-for-profit 501c3 entity. The David Stone is the president and the board chair, and then the board members are representatives of the consortium that I mentioned beforehand. The building adjacent to Building 5 is Building 4, and at 45,000 square foot, the Building 4 is a smaller version of Building 5. Given the proximity of the two buildings, the common ownership, and the overlapping management, the authority entered into a intercredit agreement with the lender of Building 4, which is Connecticut Innovations. And the intercreditor essentially defines our relationships. It made the two mortgages co-first mortgages. And the agreement is that we share all recoveries pari passu, based on our outstanding mortgage balances. I think their mortgage balance is approximately around $4 million. Over the years, Science Park has struggled to meet its redevelopment goals with the existing land and buildings. The first moratorium was granted in 2011. There's been 4 since then, with the most recent being the moratorium that was approved by the board last March in 2021. Since then, we've had extensive conversations with both Science Park and our co-lender, Connecticut Innovations, and we've learned a great deal about Science Park. I'll begin by discussing the cash flow and operations of Building 5. Building 5 is although fully occupied, cash flow is tight, and there's a number of reasons for that. First is despite the fact the market is very strong for lab space, Building 5 has been competing with more recently renovated buildings, as well as in some cases new construction. So their approach has been to offer leases at below market rents. The second complicating factor has been a large portion of Building 5 is dedicated laboratory space, which are large users of utilities, particularly electricity. And normally the electricity expense would be separately metered. But in Science Park's case, they have a different approach, which is they include utilities in part of their base rent. And they recapture some of the usage through surcharges annually over a base year expense model, this is a fairly common approach in commercial leases, but it doesn't really adequately capture the utility usage of their laboratory tenants. To give you an example, last year, Science Park incurred $661,000 in utility expense, but their income recovery from utility pass-throughs was only $204,000. The other challenge for Building 5 and Building 4 is that their renovations at this point are over 20 years. Much of the equipment and roof are reaching their life expectancy. Last year, they invested $250,000 replacing the boilers. This year, they've already contractually committed to spending $300,000 in HVAC. The elevators are way overdue for updating, both cosmetically as well as mechanically, and both buildings require a roof replacement. So in total, the estimated cost of capital expenditures for both buildings is approximately $3 million. And following what's constraining cash flow is the fact that the two buildings is really Science Park Development Corp's only source of cash flow. And so a portion of that money does go to covering Science Park, the development team's overhead. Last year, $219,000 was used in meeting their general administrative expenses. So the objective of the current moratorium is to structure the debt in such a way that it enhances the cash flow for these capital needs, while also increase the amount of control the lenders have over how the cash is spent. And we're recommending the board authorize a reduction of the monthly obligation in exchange for Science Park's agreement that the monthly excess cash flow over operating expenses plus 10% will be deposited into an account managed and controlled by CHFA, with the lender approval required for all disbursements from the general reserve. Reserve will be available for both operating expenses as well as capital expenditures. With regard to our prospect for repayment, I believe the highest recovery value is inextricably tied to Science Park's success in accomplishing the next 2 or 3 phases of the park's development. Those phases include the development of Lot 3 as a multi-purpose building consisting primarily of 260 residential units as well as some commercial on the ground floor. The demolition and remediation of Lot 7, and to some extent infrastructure improvements to the extent that they can occur. In 2018, the Science Park Development Corp entered into a pre-development agreement with Twinning Properties. Then in 2019, L&M Development Partners and Goldman Sachs joined that partnership. And the 3 of them have come up with a master plan, a $300 million redevelopment master plan that will transform the park into a walkable mixed-use campus that would include life science technologies and with retail and multifamily housing. The partnership currently owns Winchester Works, which is in the southwest corner of the park adjacent to Lot 7. The plan includes the development that I mentioned of Lot 3, which would be a mixed-use residential commercial building, which is adjacent to Building 5. The authority also recently received an application for funding a portion of the multifamily space on Lot 3. The demolition of Lot 7 is necessary because on Lot 7, it's a 6-story manufacturing building. It's an enormous structure whose concrete floors are so saturated with oil from the manufacturing process that the environmental remediation simply isn't feasible. And the building, the estimated demolish cost is approximately $10 million. Science Park did recently receive a DECD brownfield remediation program grant of $2 million. They've also applied for an urban action grant of approximately $14 million, of which, if awarded, $6 million would be earmarked for demolition of Lot 7. And the remaining funds are expected to be contributed by Olin and possibly the investors, although Olin is currently disputing the extent of its liability. The remaining $8 million of the urban action grant, if awarded, would be targeted for infrastructure improvements within the park. Science Park Development Corp believes that once development of Lot 3 is underway and a substantial portion of Lot 7 is demolished and/or demolition is complete and remediation is final, that Twinning, L&M, and Goldman Sachs will seek to complete their acquisition of the park, which would include the sale of Building 4 and Building 5. And the expectation that would occur very likely within the next 3 to 4 years. As in considering what are our alternatives to the modification being recommended, they're somewhat limited. The one option would be a competitive note sale. But given the environmental stigma created by Lot 7 and the unknown future at the immediate point of this development, this master plan actually occurring, I think the bidding would be at fairly nominal levels. I think our loss would be fairly substantial. The second alternative would be to discontinue providing moratoriums and exercise our rights under the note, which would likely lead to foreclosure. Those issues would involve the cost and time involved in a foreclosure, as well as the stigma created by our own foreclosure on both the building, but more importantly, the stigma on the park. I'd also have to think realistically, the authority would have to anticipate some community pushback with either of those two alternatives. So we're recommending the option of modifying the current loan documents to a debt service levels the project can afford, to increase the amount going to the reserve to be held and monitored by CHFA and Connecticut Innovations, and to provide Science Park Development Corp the time and opportunity to raise the capital needed to address the environmental remediation, as well as to entice new capital investment into the park. And to the extent that any of these or all of these things happen, Science Park will become a more attractive location for people to live and work, enhancing the value of Building 5 by virtue of surrounding it. Any questions?
What's
I
the
have-
collateral on our loan?
Pardon me?
What is the collateral on our loan?
Building 5.
And is there any value in getting this cross collateralized with anything else out there, any of the other buildings or land, or does it further tie their hands without any meaningful benefit to us?
That's a good question. To my knowledge, other than lot 7, most of the other land is been committed to land leases to encourage development. So they have land leases. They haven't been selling land. All the land is that I can determine from both the financial statements primarily is that the land is obligated under the land leases. And
And
the
those are
obligation,
mortgaged too, aren't they?
what's that?
Aren't most of them mortgaged also to
The
others?
buildings on them would likely be mortgaged, yes.
Yeah.
But the ground leases are structured in such a way that it encourages ultimate a purchase of the land for a nominal price.
And,
So
and
they-
you mentioned the intercreditor agreement for buildings 4 and 5. Are there any other intercreditor agreements, or is that the only one that we know of?
That's the only one we're a party to.
John, just a question for you. Thank you for your very thorough presentation on a very complex project. Until at least very recently, and this may be a little bit out of date, but HUD, actually our HUD representative in Hartford just a couple years ago told us that New Haven was the tightest rental market in the country. If that continues to be the case, I think that gives us a very strong rationale for staying vested in this project. So I just wanted to flag that as a very important consideration as to why this property continues to be important. Is that your understanding?
That is what the appraisal came through loud and clear, is that the market for this type of space is very tight, and the future is very promising, and felt that this building was very well positioned to benefit from the growth and the need for life science space.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? It is complicated, but the alternatives don't seem very appealing, foreclosure or sale of the note. So it looks to me like we're doing the best we can. So anybody else? Any other questions?
Yeah, hi,
Okay.
it's Jerry Abrahams. Can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Have we, I mean, this has been going on since
Forever.
2011, right?
Mhm.
So it's obviously a difficult situation. But has the authority sought any discussions with outside consultants or the financial advisor or anything like that?
To discuss options, you mean?
Yeah.
What our options might be? Who
Yeah.
would you recommend we'd speak with?
I'd start with your financial advisor.
Okay, well, we've had talks internally to the group. But so any expertise that you can, or names that we can, get some ideas from would be welcome, I think.
Okay,
Right?
that's fair. I mean, I was just curious if you had. I would. It doesn't hurt. Doesn't change. It doesn't change what action the board wants to take. But Heidi, I'll take a look at that and see if I can come up with some names, and then maybe I'll just coordinate through Nancy.
Right. Nandini, I would think we would welcome an opportunity to speak with someone who might have some, interesting ideas on what options we might have. But this project has been having difficulties for many, many years. And, despite the fact that the market is so strong, there's environmental issues and the ownership, potential ownership changes, and, the need to feed the beast, operating expenses and CapEx is, it's been tough.
No, we're happy to talk to anybody. If, you know, Jerry, if you have any ideas. I think we've sort of covered the options in terms of what our next immediate steps might be, but if there's other ways we could come at this, we're happy to think about it some more. And I just want to commend the team for really having spent a lot of time talking with, engaging with SBDC and CI and Heidi and Selah and others to really try to come to an agreement in terms of how we can get comfortable. I mean, there are no easy answers here, as you said, Heidi, but we feel like we're making progress.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we'll try to stay with that.
I would add, on the optimistic side, the master redevelopment plan proposed by L&M and Twinning Properties and Goldman Sachs is very impressive. And Building 5 is right in the middle of it. And to the extent that any of that happens, really improves our position within the market. So there is, different than I think 12 months ago, I think there is reason to be fairly optimistic, I think, of at least principal recovery on this loan.
That would be great. If you're a betting man, what's your odds? What's your percentage that this master plan is going to move forward? If we can demolish Building 7, it sounds like that gives some impetus to it.
It does seem that is what a lot is hinged upon is because it's interesting. If you go out onto L&M's website or Twinning Properties, they both have their Winchester Works, the one building they have on the corner of the park. And they both talk about, they both already rebranded the park as Winchester Center. It says Science Park rebranded as Winchester Center. So they're already
Marketing.
Yes. So I do think that Lot 7 is what's holding things up right now. And I think that's the linchpin. And once that happens, I do think that there's real reason to hope that the rest will fall in place. The one thing I'm interested in Jerry's thoughts is that I would like us not to be completely tied to L&M and Twinning Properties and Goldman Sachs, that partnership as our only potential buyer. And so it would be nice at that point in time where they're ready to make an offer, we have some options to consider as an alternative sale. If they're smart, they'll make the offer very early on before too much more is known, with a big discount. I think would be worth our while to hang in there, because I think there's, the opportunity is more likely to become even better longer term.
Right. Well, we're not the first. Exactly. We're not the first lender to have a problem project, right? Or tax equity syndicator. Typically, you do these things kind of in-house, but it probably doesn't hurt us to see if we can chat with somebody and if they have some ideas, and we'll see. Take it from there. It's just a conversation at this point.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Anybody, any other questions, comments, suggestions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this modification?
So moved.
Thanks, Lisa.
Second.
Okay, Greg. Shelley?
Cindy Butts had to leave for a moment.
Right.
Wendy
Okay.
Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWingert,
Aye.
Selah Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugaldi,
Aye.
unanimous.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the public comment period for amendments for CHFA's procedures, and to be presented by Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. In an effort to increase homeownership opportunities for our low and moderate income first-time home buyers and to further our mission, we're proposing just a few enhancements to the single-family housing procedures. One of them, the first one, is really an administrative item, to improve efficiency, we're recommending streamlining the approval process to implement new income and sales price limits for bond programs. The limits are updated annually and published by the IRS. They're easily confirmed by bond counsel and Chfa staff to ensure compliance prior to adopting the new limits. So we're just recommending, streamlining that process to allow bond counsel and Chfa staff to actually approve the change once it's published. The remaining items are more program related. One is referring to condominium eligibility, and I think that it might be that the procedures were written when we only offered FHA mortgages, and it said that the procedure said that condominiums had to be FHA approved in order to be eligible. But now that we offer an array of loan programs, conventional VA, we have many other loan types, we're proposing changing that to state that the condominium be approved by the program under which the borrower selects. So if they select a Fannie Mae, First Trust, then it has to be approved by Fannie Mae. So that's really what that condo eligibility is about. It's just expanding it to allow for other programs. And if you've ever worked with FHA, sometimes, many times, the condominium associations don't keep up with what they need to do to remain on the approved list. So we don't want to not be able to do loans for any of these people that want to use a different financing. And then the next thing is, we're trying to bring our programs into current mortgage and HFA industry standards. And one thing that we'd like to look at eliminating is the requirement that our first trust be maximized. For example, conventional only requires 3% down. Our DAP, or down payment assistance program, will cover that 3%. But we're not allowing people to put additional funds down if they want to. If they've saved some money, they can reduce their loan to value to a 95% and lower their cost of mortgage insurance, lower their monthly payments. We're not allowing them to do that. We're saying, if you get a down payment assistance, you can't put any more money down, even if you have it and want to. So basically, it can preclude potential home buyers by preventing them from reducing their monthly housing expense to an amount that is at an affordable level, with leveraging their own savings, family gifts, or other down payment assistance loans and grants. And mortgage insurance rates are much higher on a 97% loan to value. And just to give you an example, on a $350,000 sales price, that cost can be over $330 a month. And that's a huge amount that someone might be able to reduce or eliminate if they were able to put additional funds down. And then another thing is financial resources. We all know that if you have limited income, you have limited financial resources typically. And so where our program says that the DAP can also cover closing costs, but only if the borrower can't cover it themselves. And so what we're essentially doing is saying you have to use all of your money first, and then we'll contribute money. And we don't feel that's in the best interest of the borrowers to take all of their resources. We know that moving into a new home, whether it's new or resale, is costly, and there's things that you need to do, and you should have reserves. So if there's an opportunity for them to have reserves and they qualify otherwise, we are requesting that we not limit these borrowers to the help only if they don't have the funding available. We just feel like stripping them of the few financial resources they do have can set them up for failure in many cases. So, any questions?
I feel like we've been down this road before, because I remember talking about having reserves and how that was considered, positive, not, a negative but
we have. So back in, so this is happening in waves.
Okay. Good, I'm not dreaming it.
No, you're not dreaming. So when we did the strategic capital analysis a couple of years ago, we took a look at our programs kind of overall and made some changes, including the asset test, I think is what you're referring to, where we said, if you have X amount of assets, we're gonna require you to use those first.
Right.
What Lisa's doing now is she's really doing a deep dive into our programs, our procedures, our operating manuals, how we engage with lenders, the whole gamut of things, because we're really trying to reboot single family. Cindy had to leave, unfortunately, but she's been helpful to us in some of our discussions around how to engage with realtors and all that sort of stuff. And so these came up initially because we're in the process of building or designing a program with Department of Housing and SALA that will involve state down payment assistance funds coming to CHFA. In addition to the program that we currently run, this will be a special program. And so as we're looking at designing that program, we're saying, what are the things we have to hit first in order to make that program actually functional and work to maximize the ability of somebody being able to move into a home and not. And so these things are coming up as sort of barriers to entry. And we wanted to make sure we hit them first. We may have to come back later in the year with more changes that are also sort of outdated or maybe don't fit with the program as we see it today. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Okay. Questions, comments? So I guess it's just a little bit of a delicate dance when somebody's applying for down payment assistance when they have assets of their own, right? We want them to use them. We want them to have reserves. We want the best of all worlds. But so this seems to be trying to thread that that line.
Exactly.
Okay. Cindy, do you have a comment or? No, okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? So
I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Well, sort of. you're kind of cutting in and out.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'll say it just in case it works. One of the difficulties right now is anyone who's making an offer on a property is competing against all cash buyers. So anything, and I'm so excited about what Nandini and the commissioner are working on that will give people who need their first home and yet they're in a highly competitive environment where they have to have resources that allow them to compete. And I think that a lot of these are really working toward that goal. So I just wanted to extend my deepest appreciation for all the creativity and the willingness to look at the existing program requirements to make that a reality.
Great. Well,
Heidi, the one thing too, when you look at this list, it's definitely like the greatest hits. If you poll our buyers and you look around where the most help and focus is needed, these are great, what Lisa outlined are great places to start. It's what comes up in just about every conversation when you're looking to buy a home right now, and especially like Cindy just said, in such a competitive market that we haven't seen this type of market in quite some time.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm happy we're moving in the right direction, and we're anytime you tell me we can streamline and make ourselves more efficient, I think it's a very good thing. All right, anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, I'll move the modifications as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Shelley?
Cindy Butts,
Yes.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Salem Mascaro Bruno,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugaldi,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, we have the mortgage committee minutes from our meeting on January 25th. Anybody have any comments, changes, corrections? If none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, good. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye,
Aye.
good, thank you. All right, multifamily activities, Wendy.
Good afternoon again. We have a short report this month. There were no initial closings in January. There was one final closing for Patchogue Place Cooperative, which is an SSHP property that received DOH funding for exterior work and unit upgrades. In January, the Institute of Real Estate Management held a virtual meeting that included a Connecticut economic forecast for 2022. And Masuda represented CHFA on the panel, and there were a few other guest speakers, the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, and then Alexander Dom was representing the Department of Economic and Community Development. And then on February 8th, we did have some staff that listened on a virtual workshop. The topic was the scope of the eviction crisis in Connecticut, and that was hosted by the Aurora Foundation. And then again, we have our chart at the end of the report that highlights some of the upcoming deals that you should see in the next few months. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments? Masuda, Nandini, anybody?
No more comments.
Okay, all right, well, then I guess, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you.
So move.
Okay. All right, all in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.